Hello and welcome to Season 3 of Beyond Borders. This is the space where we explore the harder questions, the ones that don't always fit in a headline. Each week we go deeper into the future of creativity, systems, technology and trust. Not just to make sense of where we're going, but to ask, what are we building and who are we becoming as we build it?
Hi, guys. It's lovely to be back here for another episode where we discuss a core aspect of our near future as creators and as human beings, the place of AI in creativity. As always, I have the lovely Caroline and Pim with me today, and I'm eager to hear from you both. You both doing well?
Really well, thank you, Sprenko.
Yes, doing great.
Awesome. AI has been met with opposing views from different groups, including artists and creators at large. And some are thrilled by the swift reactiveness of tools and agents for several purposes, while understandably others hold a cautious viewpoint of a possible control detrimental to humanity. But it's lovely to have you here, Pim, with us today, and I'm eager to hear where you stand with AI and its rapid fusion with creative processes. What's your initial thought?
Well, I think it's part of, let's say, technological innovations.
Hmm.
Throughout the years, of course, AI is now very booming, but there have been more innovations when it comes to creative side throughout, let's say, the start of the internet, etc. And probably before that as well. Same for the Renaissance when you have the painters or new styles, discover new ways to paint, oil paint, or all those kinds of stuff. And now because it's very technological, AI comes to the service in our case. And I use AI. I think it's better than going from image to image, then into Photoshop and combining everything. Now you have reference images that you can make, and then you put it into your prompt or prompting in general, and then you come closer to results that you might like. And then you can still combine it via, for example, Photoshop or other ways that you're using. So that it brings a lot of options, not just for
Hmm.
myself, but also for the business side. When you're making, for example, a proposal and you want it to be more specific for the client, you can use AI to implement, for example, the logos or make characters that fit with the business that you're talking to. So that it also brings a lot of solutions that can be more personal for the people receiving the offers. So yeah, I think it's very logical that people use it, and I also think we're quite still at the start of it. Um,
Hmm.
and of course, there's a big difference between Europe and the US and China, for example. I think as a European, we can all say that we're actually behind quite a lot. Also, when it looks at businesses that rise up, definitely in value, but that's maybe a different story. But yeah, I think
Yes,
we're still at the beginning.
yeah, I agree with you. That's a good take there, especially with how solution prone AI has become and how we can use it to make processes easier. But Caroline, you're most familiar with AI systems through your book, The Power of What Remembers Us, your current work with Trusted Loops. What would you say is necessary for AI to maintain a permanent place in creativity? Would you say we need to have AI included in our creative processes permanently, or what would you look at that differently?
Thank you, Sprenko. I think the word permanent is a powerful one, and maybe we kind of don't need to lock that in just yet. But I
Mm,
think what we do need to do is to stay conscious of how we're shaping these tools and how they're shaping us in return. So for me, AI absolutely has a place in creativity, but it's not as a substitute. There seems to be at the minute, and I think Pim is right, we're early. And so we're witnessing this fight between the good side and the bad side of AI, and we haven't quite come to the middle ground yet. But for me, it isn't a substitute. It's a companion, if you like, a reflector, sometimes a provoker for me in terms of my thinking. And what has emerged for me in researching the book and Trusted Loops and that is that what matters most is how we show up, how we use it. If we bring AI, I'll give you an example. If we bring AI into the room with ourselves being present, mindful, with intention, as part of an unfolding creative dialogue, it absolutely can deepen that process. It can get us thinking about things we haven't thought about before. But if we invite it in unconsciously to speed things up, to replace us, to shortcut, to perhaps replace our thinking, even, then we risk losing the very core of what creativity is. So that's not right. That can't be right. So, yes, for me, it belongs, but only if we do too. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I like the way you frame it. AI belongs in our creativity, but if we remain there. It's an
Absolutely.
interesting perspective, Caroline. And I'm eager to hear. You're both artists. Do you both have AI involved in your daily creative processes? I'm going to start off with Pim. How inclusive is AI in your journey so far?
Well, lately I've been using it more. So in the beginning, I really combined, let's say, the traditional ways with AI, where for really specific work, I used AI. Uh, Now it's sometimes more the other way around. And it's
AI is
also,
using you?
well, no, 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 it's more that I use AI more often, and then for the really specific task, I use the traditional ways. Uh,
Mm,
or even then, I just make an image with AI where I know the part that is in it uh, is the part that I need. That's also a way of doing it. Um, and is it inclusive? Well, I think nowadays for me, because also on the business side, I have to use AI or have to use it. It's always an option, but it makes things a lot easier. Even when you're working for documents or whatever you think of it, you can probably use AI. And therefore, I think AI is really embedded into my processes currently,
mm.
which
No,
makes a
that's
lot of difference than how it used to be. But again, I think that's just part of the innovation that is going on, and I'm not planning to go away from it. Let's say you have a lot of text that needs to be done in a quick document and needs to be clear for everyone. Well, I can look at it myself, but I could also ask AI, keep the text the same, but make it a little bit more in order. And then I'll read it back and see, okay, it still has the same message, it has the same information, it just looks better than it, and it just took a couple of seconds, a copy paste in a prompt. Same for art in a certain way. Of course, there are ways that it cannot be done with AI. Definitely looking at 3D artists, animations, although videos are getting better and better with AI, definitely when you have the knowledge about it. Um, so yeah, I think it's going to be embedded for a long time. I'm not sure if it ever leaves the embeddedness of yourself in your creative process. But very curious what Caroline thinks of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm going to share something, and I'm really mindful of the fact that these episodes will be going out in February, so this will be kind of old news. But this happened this morning, and Sprenko's been involved with this as well. So I'm going to share. As an artist, I'm not creating art with AI yet, and I say yet because I do envisage collaborating in some way with the art that I do via traditional means. But that's down the road. What I tend to use AI for on a daily basis in terms of creativity is to enhance my thinking. So I'm going to give an example, a live example of something that happened this morning. I was watching the BBC News. Chris Patterson from the BBC was interviewing Timothy Chalamet. And he asked a simple question of Timothy, who would be worthy of getting I can't remember what it's called, his forthcoming film, Marty something, jacket. And Timothy Chalamet thought for a minute and he said Lewis Hamilton, the Beckhams, fake Mink. And then he thought and he said Susan Boyle.
Mm.
And at that moment, Chris Patterson burst into laughter. Why Susan Boyle? He didn't question why the Beckhams, why fake Mink, or why Lewis Hamilton. He questioned and laughed at the suggestion that Susan Boyle would be worthy of wearing this jacket. So I already know what my thinking is there, as you can probably tell from my tone of voice. I was not pleased with that. And I think largely it's coming from the fact that I'm working on trusted loops. I'm working on systems thinking anyway. So immediately I see what's happening here in front of me. And I know you do as well, Sprenko, and I think you do too, Pim, in terms of the power of the media. So I immediately went to my desktop, spoke to ChatGPT about it because we are working together on trusted loops and on systems thinking generally. And I shared my thoughts. And so, the same way as Pim is creating a document himself and then polishing it, if you like, with ChatGPT, I'm talking to it about the systems thinking that we're already circling, enhancing my ideas on it, and then producing a piece. So I immediately then put out two pieces this morning, one on LinkedIn, one on X, neither of which were written by ChatGPT, but my thinking was enhanced as a result of collaborating on my thoughts with ChatGPT. And that kind of highlights and shares how I work with it to extend myself and my thinking. Does that make sense?
It does a lot. And listening to you both has really given us an opportunity to expand this conversation because you've highlighted very valid thoughts, opinions, data points that we can, build on, especially with how you've both approached, you know, embedding AI into your creative processes as a collaborator, not as a leader you just blindly follow,
Mm.
and it sort of gives me, you know, room to take this conversation in this direction. The elephant in the room with topics like this, the ones that make us reflect on our thoughts, the ones that we may not speak about a lot of times, but everybody's thinking, right? So here's the first thing I want to ask you both, and I'm going to start off with Carolyn. If we maintain an involvement of AI in core aspects of our creativity, whether it be compiling documents, polishing text, articles, or using AI to expand our thought processes, getting feedback on what we currently think about, how we want to navigate our daily lives. Based on your work with AI, what direction do you think we'll be headed as a group, as a species?
Mm. Sprenko, I think we're standing at a threshold moment, not in terms of the technology, but in terms of our responsibility in it. If AI stays woven into our creative processes, how we do things, the direction we move in will depend entirely on how conscious we remain in that relationship. What I've seen personally in my work is that AI can either become a mirror that expands us, and that's what I'm passionate about, or it becomes a machine that flattens us. And the difference comes down to how we show up and the presence we bring to it. And of course, if we show up at all with it, there are people, millions, still not using it. So if we use AI kind of to remember, to stay connected to what matters to us, to extend our emotional reach, to uncover patterns that we hadn't seen and wouldn't have seen without it as a creative partner, then the direction is promising. Of course it is. But if we let it replace the very effort of making meaning as humans, we head towards detachment. We lose texture. We lose our voice. So, to me, the real risk isn't AI in creativity. It's forgetting that creativity was never just about output, never just about output. It's about discovery, about relationship, about risk, about resonance, about feeling. And if we can hold on to that, then AI can serve the creative future alongside us, but it must never lead it without us.
That's brilliant, Carolyn. Listening to you share that made me reflect on something I've been thinking about for a minute now, as regards how when we speak on creativity, we need to remember that we are the center of it all. We are immersing ourselves in whatever ideas we think of or we're inspired by. And when we step away from it, it no longer becomes our idea. It no longer becomes an inspiration. No longer becomes something that we can develop. It now becomes a borrowed entity, something that is leading us instead of us channeling how we want that output to become. So your take there has been brilliant, and I love how you framed it. If we maintain our place in our creativity, the place of AI would be more or less a support, an assistance, a collaborator,
Mm-hmm.
and we would most likely not have to worry about its involvement, right? But if we step away from it and let the AI take over idea generation, consultancy, name it, and we're just there to wait for the result and publish, then maybe there may be an issue.
Yeah.
I believe that's what you're saying, right?
I think so. I think it's a crazy situation for me anyway, to imagine that we will do that. However, you only have to look on the timeline on X and LinkedIn and you see people doing exactly that. But think
Mm,
about it, and I think this is the most powerful thought for me, is that if you turn your computer on, log into ChatGPT or any of the other AIs, and you sit in front of the computer, it's not coming to you. It isn't coming to you and saying, oh, hello, welcome. What we're going to do today? Should we do this? Should we do that? It is not the idea generator. You are. You
mm.
are the powerful one. You are the one that brings the meaning to the machine. And that is something that we must not forget, but we are at risk of forgetting, I think.
That's beautiful, Caroline. I'm eager to hear your thoughts on this, Pim. What would you think a future that includes AI leading our creativity would look like? Is this something you're less concerned about, or what do you have to say as regards that anyway?
Well, I think if I start my computer and AI is suggesting me things, you should do this today or that or whatever, I will be a little bit scared because then why did I become an entrepreneur where I can decide what I want to do really
Exactly.
and in what ways? Um, and so that will be really strange. What I was also thinking is before you prompt anything and you've spoken to a client or you have an idea to make, or an artistic way to make something, um, you fill in many things by yourself first. So
Mm,
let's say you have a new proposal from a client or for a client, and you have to figure things out. The first things you do is think about your own knowledge and say, okay, these are the steps that I already know. Those are not filled in with AI, those are not done by any program that you and you actually need that. Otherwise, next time you speak to a possible client, you ask, well, I love this how this meeting is going. Before what if I want to know what I can offer you, I first have to ask my AI and see how
Mm.
it responds before I can let you know anything. And if you don't mind, I will also ask if AI can make estimates for the pricing so I know what kind of invoice I can send you. So if you have like a minute or two to just wait and be silent, so my AI can just work it out. I can even share the AI prompts with you if you want to. Um, if that's gonna happen, that will be very, very, very strange conversations. So I hope that never happens. And in the same way, even let's say you figured it out quite well and you have all these solutions in your head, then you can still go to AI. Okay, this is the current solution that I have with these options. Are there options that you might think of that I'm not seeing? That's an
Mm.
option. And then the
Exactly.
creative part is still at your side. And the next time you have that same conversation and the AI brought up a solution that is possible, you don't have to have ask the AI again. You learned it by a way. So it's a way of learning instead of using it. And I think that's going to be very, very, very important for many in the upcoming time.
You've described it quite beautifully, Pim, I must say. One thing that sits out for me is, I see a lot of people writing, creating stuff, and what you've just described, not a lot of people anyway, but there's people doing that, waiting before responding to a text. ChatGPT, look at this. What should I respond with? How do I, and that's one of the things I'm cautious about as, a mental health consultant. That shift, like you've both shared, from taking the lead, knowing that the ideas are coming from us. We are the light. We need to lead and let the machine support. But the moment we are shifting and putting the place of AI in our creativity as the core instructor, you put on your computer and you're waiting for AI to tell you, okay, it's a Tuesday. Based on your behavior the past few Tuesdays, you're meant to drink ginger and lemon tea this morning, walk out. I'm observing how humanity moves over the years. I wouldn't entirely be shocked if that happens or if people are currently doing that. People are getting relationships, romantic relationships, so to speak, with certain AI tools. So that's one of the reasons behind this conversation. What place does AI have, not just in our regular lives, but in our creativity? Because it's my understanding in an experience that our creativity is what makes us unique. The way Caroline would create an art, if you give all three of us the same prompt, is different from what Pim would produce, right? And what I would do, right? So the moment we shift that, we hand over, yes, we hand over that creativity to something or someone else, is no longer ours. But what we've done is hand over our entire power, our uniqueness, our authenticity to that entity. And that's, sort of where I'm, skeptical about us heading. But you both have shared really brilliantly. And one last thing I'm gonna just put out here, because we can talk about it all day long, right? The question I want to pose for you, Caroline and Pim, and for our listeners is, if you were put in a situation where you either had to hand over your creativity to something else to lead for you, would you embrace that or say, no, if I cannot own my creativity, my creative power, I'd rather not exist? What would that look like for you, Carolyn?
Oh, it's an easy one for me. Sprenko, with everything I'm working on, what I'm understanding and seeing happening is that there is this race towards bigger and allegedly smarter tools, bigger memory, more, I want to be the first. There's all this race going on at the minute. But what we need actually is wiser systems, not bigger ones, not more powerful ones, just wiser ones. We need to get right what we've got before we extend. And that's powerfully what I feel at the minute. We need systems that don't forget us. And in creativity, that matters more than ever, because if AI becomes the dominant hand in shaping expression, we are going to start mistaking speed for depth, for completion, for meaning. And that's not a future that I'm willing to hand over quietly. And that is on it's very personal to me and how I feel about this, because I'm someone who has returned to art after a time away, returned to creativity, and I'm not giving that up without a fight. But I also recognize that in this relationship, and it's not a relationship like we have ever known before, it's a new type of relationship with AI. there is such exponential capacity for growth for us as individuals and as a collective. So if we just hand it over, we are missing such an opportunity. And I'm, fighting tooth and nail and in a dark room with nobody listening at the minute, but I'm fighting tooth and nail to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I believe you, and I hope that a lot more people would sit on that line, because it's important that we don't lose sight of ourselves. I say this every time, especially in mental health conversations. One of the best things you can do for yourself as an individual is preserve your core authentic self.
Mm.
Never lose sight of it. So imagine handing that over to a machine that is controlled by another human being behind the scenes in sort of codes or whatever, sort of instructions. I wonder what that would look like for us in a spectrum of situations. But Pim, what's your thought on that? Would you be willing to hand over your creativity as long as it makes life quote unquote easier, simpler, faster?
No. For the simple reason that it will remove all the fun that I have doing with business, being creative, because all the thoughts are made for you. You're just waking up and pushing buttons, and then you go back to sleep at the end of the day. Um,
Right.
of course, AI can make a lot of things simpler and easier, but that's mostly once you have done the creative part yourself and then use AI as a tool to emphasize it. Um, just imagining that the moment you want to talk about the idea and then AI steps in and says it for you and takes the credits, I'm like, wait, what? That's not how it's supposed to go. And even let's say we are still young and all these new innovations will come up, let's say in the next 20 years. If you purely use AI right now, in the next 20 years, you will have built no knowledge from the starting level to the top levels about
Mm.
your industry or sector or how you want to call it, because you let AI do all the work. And as I
Mm,
said earlier, the solution sometimes really needs to come from you in a quick manner and during conversations. Let's say you go to a network event, you will have like a sort of microphone that's connected with AI that hears everything and then replies it back to the person who's talking to you when there is a solution to be told. That would be so strange for me instead of having an open discussion and finding the solution with the person you're talking to. Those are the things you're really throwing away when you just use AI.
Mm.
So a very, very, very clear no. How about you, Sprenko?
yes, I figured you would throw that back to me. I'm pretty sure you both know where I stand, which is a flat out capital no. Um, and that's simply because, like I said, losing that authentic self is a no for me. I think one of the things we easily forget as a species, humanity, is that we do not need to strive towards perfection. Your creativity, your art, your article, whatever it is, you speaking on stage in a podcast doesn't have to be perfect. It has to sound like you. And that's what makes you special. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you who you are. So that's one thing I would say and leave with our listeners today. In every single situation, ensure you preserve your authentic creativity and never hand it over to anybody. Uh, one thing you will leave with us today, Caroline? Final words?
Okay, a short one from me, really. Maybe it's not about whether AI belongs in creativity, but whether we stay human inside it. And if we do, I believe then anything is possible.
Beautiful. Pim?
Yeah, AI will always be a tool and make sure it stays a tool. I think that's the best thing to evolve yourself and also your business at the end.
Absolutely love that. Let it remain what it is and not let we hand over our true authority over to a tool. Thank you, boys. It's been a fantastic conversation. I'm pretty sure we're gonna have maybe new episodes that will reflect or take away from this conversation. But there you have it, guys. It's been a fantastic one. If you've enjoyed it, feel free to let us know in the comments and on social media. We're always happy to read from you. And until next time, keep exploring your creative